Hi, I'm Reed, and I'm going to do an overview of the Gunsite 223 Carbine class. I took it in October of 2019, and it is currently December 2020, so I'm relying on notes that I took during the class. To start off, you should definitely go. It's great. It was a ton of fun. I highly recommend the class. Instructors were excellent. I'm going to cover who should go and kind of what we covered each day. Because I didn't find this content anywhere else when I was taking the class, and so hopefully it'll help you. To start off, if you can unload your rifle, and you know the basics of gun safety, you should take this carbine class. I was a little worried about what the skill level meant because it's a class that doesn't have any prereqs, but at the same time, they handled people who used firearms for a living, used rifles for a living. About half the class were professionals, and about half the class were civilians, and there were two people who were basically brand new. And I think that if you can load and unload, and you know basic gun safety rules, that you will get a lot out of this class, kind of on the bottom end. The class was a mixture of shooting and class time, but we spent the bulk of the time at the range. You can drive your car down to the range, which was something that I didn't know. But sometimes we carpooled to the shoot house, so the way I would set it up is kind of have your main bag and then have something that's smaller, like a backpack, that's easy to take into somebody else's car if you're in a carpool. Not big, heavy Pelican cases for all your stuff. Okay, so day one, we did class intro, zeroing rifles, learning to shoot, learning about downloading magazines and push-pull mag reloads. So that's where you stick the magazine in and you pull back down to verify that it was set correctly. And malfunction clearing. Day two was close range offsets. Often after a break, the first drill back to the line was a close range headshot, so you could think about your offset. Double feed clearing, and how to mortar the rifle if you have a malfunction where the casing's stuck inside. I learned that 30-round mags work great as a monopod if you're trying to lay down and shoot, but a 20-round doesn't. I had some 20-round mags, and they were too short for me to be able to get the good sight picture and still use the magazine for stability. Kneeling shooting, tips from dry firing, like keep 100% of ammo out of the room. And then one thing that I hadn't heard of before, but makes sense after I heard it, was if you get interrupted for any reason, stop your dry fire practice. That an interruption is the type of thing where you make a mistake. Stop for the day. Wait, do more dry fire practice the next day. And their suggestion was to not practice malfunction clearing because our instructor said that the goal was to learn how to get to a bang. And so if you're practicing your malfunction clearing, then you don't want to bang when you're dry firing. Cool. So day three, how to transition to a pistol, avoiding bone-to-bone contact for stability as you're in weird positions, turning and shooting, adverse positions, so with the rifle horizontal or rolled up underneath something, and what that does. And the long and the short of the adverse positions is there's a reason why you want a good shooting position, and if you can't get into it, you have to aim above your target and then also in the direction of the mag well, because that's the direction your sights would be offset to. The theory of clearing rooms, and they basically said don't try to by yourself. Clearing rooms is a very dangerous activity. If you can at all avoid it, please do. And then they talked about still what the theory was. Move from an open area to the most protected spot, back up to give yourself space, pie the corners, which people might have seen from movies and video games, move into the room, clear the corner, step into the corner, scan the room, first for people, then open spaces, then unscanned areas, closets, desks, etc. When clearing small spaces, consider keeping your muzzle up versus muzzle down, because it's easier to have your rifle drop than it is to raise your rifle up. Okay, so that was day three. Day four was non-standard response drills. So if you're watching this video, you might be familiar with the concept, two to the body, one to the head, the Mozambique drill. Part of that teaches recoil control. It also teaches moving your sights on a target to aim for a different spot. This was non-standard response drill, so you shot until you got the effect you were looking for. So in this case, they had pneumatic targets that would be like this, and then they would present to you, and then you would need to shoot until they went like this. So what was cool about this is the amount of time the pneumatic targets would stay facing you was controlled by the instructor, and so you would have to shoot, but you'd have to pay attention to what the target was doing. It wasn't moving or anything, but it would need to. If it started to turn back, you needed to stop shooting. And so that kind of showed you whether or not you were just burning down the trigger or if you were able to think between each shot. So the goal was as many shots as you could while you could still think, which was pretty cool. That was an interesting lesson that I couldn't have learned. I wouldn't have learned on my own. We did shooting moving targets. They talked about the two different methods. One is ambush, where you hold into a particular point, you wait for the target, and then pull the trigger. The other one was tracking, where you followed kind of along. We shot like a walking speed target inside of 100 yards, and they basically said you need no holdover, just aim. So that was kind of interesting. We did some low light stuff on day 4. The class went a little later, and here are my notes for low light. You want as much light as you possibly can. The throw for positive identification, spill for better inside of structures. They talked about the philosophies of why you want a light on the rifle or not, and they quoted somebody whose name I didn't write down. They basically said they had 68 students that they taught that got in a gunfight, and 0 of them have had to use a white light or wish they had a light. So that was like one perspective for you don't need a white light on things. There was another instructor who focused on bad shoots. So this is where the wrong person or people got hurt. And according to that instructor, 80% of the time there was a bump in the night. It's a family member, drunk person, or someone with dementia. And a light is a great way to positively identify the targets and be able to control the scenario and avoid shooting somebody who you don't need to shoot because you don't want to shoot people. Light placement impacts shadow. So if you put it at 12 o'clock, you'll have shadow below, right and left, underneath. It'll change where the shadow is. The other thing was you can feel the magazine before or after. So if you on an AR mag, if you feel the rounds and they're on the right, and you load the magazine, and then charge the rifle, and then drop the magazine, you should feel the bullet is now at the top of the magazine is now on the left. That's a great way of being able to, without using your eyes, being able to tell if there's probably a round seated, because you aren't going to be able to press check if you're trying to stay dark. I've used this when hog hunting, when you're, for me, I shoot 300 blackout, and so being able to change mags between supers and subs, I will drop a magazine, rack out the subs, because we're moving from a place where we're shooting raccoons or whatever else to some place we might shoot hogs, and I'll kick out the sub rounds and drop in supers. I need to make sure that they're loaded correctly, but we're in a side-by-side driving down the road, so it's pretty helpful. You also feel the bolt to make sure it's a battery, so you can actually feel if a bolt carrier group hasn't gone all the way forward. You don't need to hit the button. All right. Cool. So day 5 was really fun. It was an outdoor simulation on unknown distances. So they taught you kind of how to spot targets. I was way more effective with my short barrel 300 blackout than I expected. I was running a honey badger, so like a 6 and something inch barrel, very short, and was able to do holdovers. You know, it went out to 500 yards, I want to say. Maybe it was closer, maybe it was 400, but most of the targets were in the 90 to 200 range. You had to spot them and shoot them, and you got one shot. And if you missed, you got one more, and then you had to move on. And it was a timed thing with penalties for missing. And that was a ton of fun. It felt way more like the hunting I'm used to. We also did the shoot house, which was crazy fun and super unique, where you actually had to go in and clear a structure and take that theory from earlier in the week and actually apply it. for me, this was really cool. This is something I could never do on my own, even if I had the time, because I'm not going to have access to a shoot house. I don't use a rifle for a living. And it was fun to go through the motions and see what you remembered and what you didn't remember, and feel the adrenaline, even though they're paper targets. So that was pretty cool. And then at the very end, there was a competition, shooting competition. I will say having magnification was helpful at the shooting competition, and I had none. But it was fun to compete against all the other students at the end and see how you did. And that's what we did over 5 days. If you have questions, put them in the comments below. I may or may not respond because I don't do this for a living. But have a great day, and Merry Christmas, because it's 2020. Merry Christmas in December.